While you're listening to this podcast, Pam, my wife, and I are away on our vacation. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it's not the extended overseas trip that we usually take at this time of the year, but we're fortunate enough to be able to take a number of breaks during the year because we've built a substantial property portfolio, a substantial property business that gives us the lifestyle we enjoy. Now, I'm not showing off. What I'm suggesting is that you should also build a substantial asset base to give you more choices in life. Now, I'm still working because I enjoy working, but I've got the choice to take time off, to play with whom I want to play with, to give back to the community. And what I'm suggesting is that in 2021, in this new year, you should also start either building your property portfolio or add to your existing portfolio to build your own substantial asset base. Now, how are you going to do that? How are you going to be different from all those investors who don't get past their first or second property? Well, the answer is to learn from those who've already succeeded, who've achieved what you want to achieve. And that's what Pete Wargent and I are going to talk about in today's show, which is part of our summer series, where I'm replaying some of the shows that were published before. This one was published just on a year ago, when Pete tells us the lessons he learned from successful investors when he joined us at Wealth Retreat. Now, as I said, this show was recorded about 12 months ago, and Pete was talking about Wealth Retreat 2019, but he's been part of the faculty of Wealth Retreat for a number of years, and he's again going to be part of the faculty in 2021. Now, you're going to hear how Pete comes along each year. He comes to Wealth Retreat, like many of the other faculty members, not just to teach, but also to learn from the other people there. By the way, that's something you should consider doing, joining us at Wealth Retreat 2021. Now, unfortunately, we didn't run Wealth Retreat last year in 2020 because of COVID. However, we've set aside the second weekend of June for what many people is the Queen's birthday long weekend to spend 5 days masterminding and learning with an amazing group of people. Now, don't count yourself out. Don't think Wealth Retreat isn't for you. You see, a lot of people missed out achieving many of their goals in 2020. So maybe this is the right time. Maybe this is the right year. But first, have a listen to what Pete has to say. And remember, during January, we are going to bring you 3 shows. This is one of the summer series where we repeat some of the best shows from the past. And today I'm also going to share with you something special in my mindset moment. So welcome to today's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment, and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect, and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now, here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
If you're a regular listener to my podcast or you've been subscribing to my property update newsletter, you know that once a year we run Australia's highest end wealth event, Wealth Retreat, where a small group of people get together on the Gold Coast, already high achieving business people, entrepreneurs and investors, and we help them plan their life for the next year or the next 5 years. Because the theme of Wealth Retreat is where you're going to be in 5 years' time. Now, one of the regular presenters for quite some time now, one of the more popular presenters, well, they're all popular, most popular presenters is Pete Wargent. And I've got Pete here today because we were just having a chat ourselves, because we use Wealth Retreat to help grow our own businesses, our own portfolios. And I asked Pete, what did you get out of Wealth Retreat? And I was impressed with what he said, so I thought we could share it with you. So welcome, Pete.
Pleasure, Michael. It's great to be back.
Well, yes, you're one of the most regular guests on the Michael Yardney podcast, and there's a reason why I keep having you back. People love hearing your insights, Pete. So tell us, what did you get out of Wealth Retreat this year? Because you've been a few times, but I know each time we have a chat, you tell me you benefit from it.
Yeah, that's right. I've lost count of how many years, but it's been at least 5, I think, that I've spent at the Gold Coast now, and been a presenter as well. So for me, this was the best one yet. Maybe partly a reflection of the stage of my journey as well. But I think to some extent, the more times you do these things, the power of repetition has a real benefit. Yeah, I took away, I think, three lessons that sprung to mind. So we can have a run through those today. Yeah, so I think the first one was from a property investment point of view, because as you know, a lot of the people at Wealth Retreat, it's a bit self-selecting. They generally have property investments or property portfolios, and it was interesting to really dig into the markets, because we get a lot of sort of high-level commentary in the media, and it's one of those great cliches that you hear in real estate circles, that there is no one property market. But I think what we've really found in the past couple of years is just how true that really is, because a lot of the A grade stock has held up pretty well, but a lot of that stuff that it's one of the sort of definitions of a housing boom is when even the rubbish sells, and that's clearly what we saw some years ago. And
Now, I've not heard that before, Pete, but I really like that one. I'm going to use that again if I may.
yeah, that's right. It's not one of mine. I think it's one I heard from somewhere else. But you see stuff being constructed next door to airports and on busy main roads, and all of that stuff did happen. But when the downturn has come, it's been quite clear just how much better the well-appointed properties with either water views or a point of scarcity, and they tick all of the boxes. Those markets have held up so much better, and quite clearly now post-election, thankfully we're coming back out the other side, and banks are making lending a bit easier again. So I think that was my first lesson, is that the tried and tested formula that you've been teaching at Wealth Retreat over all these years, I mean, is once again, it's proven that it actually does work. And in the boom times, it all seems easy, but in the downturns, of course, people get shaken out.
So one of my investment philosophies has always been to invest in what has always worked, what's worked in the long term, rather than just what works now. So again, during the last year or two, when the market flattened, people were looking for new ways to do things. No, it's not the right time to change your strategy. And similarly, now as the market is moving to the next phase of the cycle, it's a great time to buy counter-cyclically. Sydney, when was the last time we've been able to buy Sydney 15% at a 15% discount, or Melbourne at a 10% discount from what it was? That happens once or twice in your lifetime, but not every property is going to increase in value. I think you were right, Pete, saying that we've got to go back to the fundamentals, but I see in the future slower wages growth and a bigger disparity between those who can afford to take on more mortgages and the average Australian. That's going to mean certain properties are going to be able to grow in value more because people can afford them, and we're going to have to be careful to avoid other areas of the market, Pete.
Yeah, definitely. I think the really big change in the past couple of decades, I mean, you couldn't have missed it. It's been a change in technology that to some extent does drive a disparity of wealth. That's unavoidable to a certain extent, but it tends to create these sort of pyramids of wealth in the most sought after areas. And you can see quite clearly in recent years, all of the major tech companies, the FANG stocks as they call them, so the Amazons and the Googles, they're opening up commercial space right in the centre of Sydney on the harbour side. And we'll just see what we've seen in the US, and that's that wealth tends to concentrate around those areas.
And the wealthy people want to live in the same areas, in general, close to the CBD, close to the water, close to where the jobs are. And I think, unfortunately, as more and more people are moving into Melbourne, Sydney, and to a lesser extent, Brisbane, there's going to be a flight for those more affluent, gentrifying locations. And currently, with all the news that we're hearing about those high-rise buildings, people are going to be very scared of moving into a lot of the big towers. So they're going to want to avoid those. And there's not enough of the other sort of properties in those areas, Pete.
No, it's the missing middle that you always talk about. It's stuff that perhaps more medium density. I mean, high-rise construction is really taken off since 2012, mainly because a lot of it was bought by people overseas who never even saw those properties. But they come with a real mixed range of quality. So certainly the lower grade investment stock, lots of what's almost daily headlines now about building defects. That will send people back around the more established properties, as you said.
One of your lessons from Wealth Retreat was that there isn't one Australian property market. Now, we've said that before. So you're not only talking about states, you're talking about within the state that there's the capital cities and there's the regional areas, and then within the capital cities, there are some suburbs that are going to outperform, and then you've got to even dig further, because in every suburb there are locations where they're more likely to outperform because of the streetscape, the amenity. You've got to know your market down to that level. And that's one of the areas where I find it interesting that some buyers agents fly in, fly out and think they understand the local market, or other people are just taught by some of the courses. You can do all your work online. You can actually do all your homework and research, and you can get the building and pest inspector to tell you if the property is okay or not. That doesn't give you the perspective of what's happening, does it, Pete?
No, well, a bit of a Queensland phrase for you, but they say that the agents from interstate up here, they say they're as green as tully grass because they don't know the local areas, and of course they don't get the best deals because they're not familiar with the local markets. But as for people buying stuff sight unseen, well, you're basically just asking for trouble, and I don't think it's a wise route to go down.
Fully agree, yet some people are suggesting it takes the emotion out of it until you have problems, and then, boy, do you get emotional. So lesson one from Wealth Retreat is not all property markets are the same. What was another good lesson you got out of Wealth Retreat this year?
Well, I suppose it's something that's really happened over the past year, and that's that, as you know, these days I have a coaching business, and I realised I myself, if I want to grow my business, needed a business coach. So I'm now part of the Metropole Mastermind program with Mark Creedon, and I've experienced some really significant benefits from that, partly because of the network, but also just having a business coach on hand to give me some specific advice. And it's like the old 80-20 rule. You never know quite which nuggets of advice are going to make all the difference. But I mean, I should say thank you to Mark here and take the opportunity, because I've just come on leaps and bounds in terms of my business this year and my coaching programs, and thank you to you guys for putting in place that system that has allowed me to grow.
Business Accelerator Mastermind is a program that Mark Creed and I have now put together, and you can find out about it at metropolemastermind.com.au. Is a network, a tribe of successful business people and entrepreneurs who want to take themselves to the next level. And I know you and I are getting together shortly at the intensive. So if some of it's online, a lot of it with Mark is one-on-one, and then there's one-on-many at these intensives. But interestingly, I had not thought about it before, we both share the same business coach. And I agree with you. If somebody said to me, Michael, what's made your business so successful to build it to a national business, to build it to the level you have, it has been to have coaches. Now, I've had 3 business coaches in the last 15 years or so, because sometimes you outgrow them, things change. But I fully agree with you. It's isolating. It's hard on your own, and you need a tribe around you, but you need the right people, Pete.
That's exactly right. I mean, it just occurred to me the same thing, and that's that success leaves clues, and it's no coincidence that we have the same business coach. I mean, certainly in my case, what I need sometimes is I don't need motivation. I've got plenty of motivation. What I need is somebody to hold me accountable to not doing everything myself, and actually delegating the non-core aspects of my business so that I can focus on what I'm good at.
I think one of the things that successful business people think is, I already know it. I don't need that. I'm more successful than my coach. Well, they don't know how successful or not Mark is, but that's a separate question. But it's not that you aren't already successful in your own right, and it's not that you don't know a lot. It's a bit like having a combination lock, and just that extra little thing that you said, that little nugget, you don't know where they're going to come from, is the thing that trips that last number of the combination lock, and it opens up, and all of a sudden you get I was going to say a Pandora's box, but I'm not sure. I think a Pandora's box is not good, is it? But you get a whole lot of good stuff come out.
Yeah, and for me, it's the scalability. That's what Mark has really helped me to unlock. It is different for different businesses. Everybody has a bottleneck. For me, it was delivering. I've got stacks of great content. I know I can add value, but I wasn't doing it in a scalable fashion. And as you said, Mark is a business coach who can look at it from a helicopter level and just unlock that combination for you. And the difference has just been multifold for me. And I'm sure the same for a lot of the other people in the program as well.
Well, more and more people have joined it recently, and all the directors of Metropole are there because we know how important it is to actually have somebody to be accountable for. And there's some great lessons. So Business Accelerator Mastermind at metropolemastermind.com.au. But also, I think one of the things I've noticed, you've probably also Pete, is that each year at Wealth Retreat, there are a larger number of business people attending. So they use the cash flow from their business to buy investment properties. What I've suggested to most business people is that you're still going to have to work in your business for some time. People have got this lovely idea of I'm going to just work on my business, but they tend to work in the business, but they need another business on the side. They need one without the moving parts. They need one that can actually make money for them when they go away on holidays. And so that second business should be their property business, and using the cash flow from the physical business to invest in real estate makes a good mix.
Oh, for sure. It's no coincidence that the wealthiest people, it goes back to what Robert Kiyosaki called the cash flow quadrants. So the people with the business and investing quadrants, it becomes this beautiful virtuous circle where the profits from the business go into investments and they throw off more cash and equity for you. It's much harder for people in the employment and self-employment quadrants to benefit from the same leverage, the same tax benefits. So I think it's probably no coincidence that we see more business people at Wealth Retreat as time goes on. It's not to say that employees can't invest in property too, but having extra income from a business can certainly help from a serviceability point of view as well these days.
Another thing is that there will always be employees, but why not, while you are an employee, set up your own business on the side? And I don't mean network marketing or online marketing. What I'm suggesting is build a property investment business, and that you can do bit by bit, property by property over a period of time as well. Because as you pointed out with Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, the government gives incentives. They give tax breaks, they give tax loopholes to business owners and investors that they don't give to PAYG earners, do they?
No, that's right. And the tax system is incentivizes people to be that way. So because businesses create jobs, investors provide their capital for a capitalist economy to grow. So the tax benefits will always be skewed towards the business owner and the investor. Now, if you're an employee, there are some handy tax benefits for investors, which you should make the most of. But I think the wealthiest people will be the people that own businesses and invest as well.
No argument about that. That shows up every year in the World Wealth Reports, that it's actually business owners number one, and then investors number two. But most business owners save their money and put it into investments. Pete, we were going through the top lessons you got from Wealth Retreat. What's another one?
Well, the third one was simply just the power of networking, because I think that even if I didn't absorb any of the content from Wealth Retreat, which I always do, but even if I didn't, I would still come along simply for the networking aspects, because there's an old saying that your network is your net worth. And I mean, this isn't just my opinion. It's scientifically proven that the most successful people always have the most powerful network. So anything you can do to build your network of successful and like-minded and positive people, that can only help. And one thing I've found is that now I'm a parent with two young kids. Well, there's only so much time in my life for connections. So if I'm making new connections, I want them to be the right sort of people. And Wealth Retreat is absolutely perfect for that.
Well, it's not just who you know, it's who you know knows. And I'm not stuttering. Basically, if I need somebody in the equity space or the funds management space or things like that, I don't know that. I'm not in that area, but you do. So therefore, all of a sudden, your Outlook address book is open to me.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's every year you see the new connections and new ideas spring from those connections. People make new sales, they create new business ideas. The networking is very powerful, and it goes far beyond just the immediate connection, because as you said, it's also who your connections know as well, and what doors can they open for you too.
One of the things I've always appreciated at Wealth Retreat is that while there are some very, very successful business owners there, some very large investors, they leave their Superman capes at the front door. So there's no egos. And so people will speak openly, they'll share experiences, and you just don't just learn from the faculty, you also learn from the people that you have breakfast, lunch and dinner with. And that's why while we're on the Gold Coast, we're actually a bit separate from the main hustle and bustle of the Gold Coast. So people stay together. It's a great learning environment. It's not the sort of thing you can get from you can learn a certain amount from the internet. You can get so much from podcasts like this or books or your blogs or my blogs, but it's actually the environment that makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting to look back because I remember as going way back to the earlier days of Wealth Retreat when I was still an employee myself, and I still very much had an employee mindset. And I used to look at the adverts for Wealth Retreat and say, well, why would people willingly pay a lump sum of money to go and spend a week? I can learn this stuff myself on the internet. But that's just really a reflection of how closed my mindset was at that point. Whereas these days, I wouldn't miss it for the world. So it shows how you come along as you travel along that journey.
I think one of the other things is that you're not the only one who comes back year after year, and you're coming back as a presenter now, and you have been for a long time. But even so, you're coming back as a student because that's one of the common traits amongst successful business people, entrepreneurs and investors. They're continuously learning, they're continuously wanting to improve. And even though the content is similar, it changes every year because the world changes, people come back as a different person. You're at a different stage in your journey. You get different things out of it, Pete.
Oh, 100%. And it's not just the technical content or the educational content, it's also the goal setting, holding yourself accountable, meeting new people and networks. There's many different aspects to it that make it so good.
Interestingly, one of the things I enjoyed this year was Glenn, who had set himself 5-year goals and achieved half of those in the first 12 months. I remember the year before, Joanne got up at the end of the first day, and she similarly had set herself some really, really audacious 5-year goals, but had actually achieved them in close to 2 years, and now was resetting herself for even more goals. So part of it is goal setting. There's also the mindset section, my mentorship program on steroids for the first day and a half or so, that I know some of the analytical people have a bit of difficulty with at the time, but then they get it, that you actually can't outgrow your wealth operating system unless we get rid of your limiting beliefs. And it's interesting, even the most successful people, and you picked one of mine, we spoke about it privately, even the most successful people there do have limiting beliefs. And so therefore you've got to be open to growing and getting rid of some of the things that are holding you back, Pete.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's not common to just you or me, it's common to all of us. We have a certain set of unwritten rules or beliefs that we adhere to, but many of them are just limitations that we set upon ourselves. So mine, as you mentioned, with Mark has helped me to sort of remove a limitation where I thought I had to do everything face-to-face and everything one-to-one. And Mark was saying, look, you can add more value to more people by providing a leveraged coaching program. And he's just helped me to just remove that limitation. I think people, well, hopefully you don't mind me sharing, but one of the limitations that I identified with you is that, well, we provide this amazing content, a wealth retreat, to a select group of people every year. Well, next year, why can't we add it to a few more people? Because we often have a similar number. And I guess it's just good to have people challenge you on the same limitation.
It was exactly right. That was one of my limiting beliefs, because interestingly, this year we went back to exactly the same room we had the first wealth retreat in at a hotel on the Gold Coast that we hadn't been to for a number of years. And while the content is great and the format has changed considerably, in fact, we hadn't grown the number of people. And one of my limiting beliefs was we only needed to have it wouldn't work in a small group in a larger group environment. So there's only 50 attendees and about 20 faculty. Well, you're right. This year for 2020, this coming year, we're wanting to have a much larger group of people because we realised that the more successful people you have there, the more networking, the more masterminding you do, the better the result is for everybody. So if you're interested in Wealth Retreat 2020, set aside the second weekend of June 2020 in your diary. I was going to say pencil it in. Don't. Circle it in really hard, or in your electronic diary, put it in, then go to wealthretreat.com.au, and you can't book in. You actually have to register your interest, and I will speak with you personally, and let's see if it's suitable for you, what your goals are. And I know it sounds a long, long way away, but it'll come around pretty quickly. And so go to wealthretreat.com.au, have a look at what we do, register your interest, and let me have a chat with you, and let's see if we can work together over the next couple of years. Pete, thank you so much for sharing those 3 lessons from Wealth Retreat, and I'd love to have you on a podcast again real soon, and we'll speak a bit more about property.
That sounds great, and I've blocked out the week in my diary, and in fact I've blocked out 2 weeks because as you know, I like to stay back in the Gold Coast for an extra week because the kids always enjoy it.
Well, that's interesting because people do bring their families as well, even though it's really, really hard work. But I do agree with you that you need to block some time aside to actually work on yourself and on your business. And for many people, especially business people, it's tax deductible. So I'm going to see you a few times before then, but I look forward to enjoying Wealth Retreat with you next year too. Pete, thank you very much. If people want to find out more about you or your coaching program, how do they get in contact with you?
Nice and easy these days with the internet. PeteWargent.com is my main website. And if you're interested in my coaching, it's go nextlevelwealth.com.au, and there's lots of free content for you there.
And you're a regular blogger, and many of your blogs are reposted on Property Update. So thanks a lot, Pete.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers, Michael.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In today's Mindset Moment, I want to explain to you why you shouldn't worry about your failures. Look, we all get things wrong. We all make mistakes. But I want to explain to you a couple of reasons why failing is overrated. Now, I've failed in all sorts of ways in my life, in my personal life, in my business life, even in my investments over the years. But let me again remind you why failing is overrated. First of all, failure is never permanent. That sinking feeling that you've got, that'll never last forever. The best way to reflect on your failures is to focus on the lessons that you've learned and the persons you're going to become, rather than spending your time trying to avoid failure. The less time you spend on rejection, the faster you're going to grow. The second way you should think about failure differently is to own up to your failures. The moment you openly talk about the things that make you vulnerable, they no longer have power over you. People will appreciate your honesty because everyone knows what it's like when they've had setbacks, when they've made mistakes. They're going to respect you for owning up to your problems and embracing your failures. And in the process, you will become stronger. Now, another reason why failing is overrated is the world won't change unless you do. The world owes you nothing. It was here first. We can't blame the shortfalls in our lives or other people around us or past decisions that we've made for how things are in the present. It's not the events that define who you are. It's how you choose to react to them. So forget what others are saying. They're never going to judge you anyway. They don't really care as much about what you're doing or how you performed like you think. But you do have to realise that if you want the world to change, you're going to have to change your ways first. Now, this is a common theme that comes through my mindset moments, isn't it? So the next question really is, how badly do you want it? Whatever it is that hasn't worked out. As Steve Jobs once said, if you don't love it, you're going to fail. Look, we've all heard about Thomas Edison, who had 1,000, or supposedly 1,000 unsuccessful attempts at inventing the light bulb. But from his perspective, I didn't fail 1,000 times. He's said to have said that the light bulb was just an invention that took 1,000 steps to get there. So I'd like you to remember that just because you failed, it doesn't mean you're a failure. Never let failure deteriorate your self-worth. Now, I know it's easy to say and it's hard to think about it that way, but if your head hurts, you say, I've got a headache. You don't say, I am a headache. So failure is nothing more than an event. It doesn't mean you're a failure, so don't personalise it. And it's really important to recognise that failure is part of the process. The fastest way to success is to double your failure rate. Successful people have failed more times than a beginner has ever tried. If you want to succeed, fail faster. I often say I'm a real success at failure, but that's okay because I get up one more time, and so should you. So don't worry about your failures. Well, Thank you for listening to the show so far. And to sum it up, I'd like to suggest that you try and do something different in 2020, in this new year, to make your life different. I don't know at what stage of your journey you're at, but each week, well, twice a week, I'm going to share with you my ideas on this podcast. And if you get some benefit from it, I'd really appreciate it if you help me in my quest to make more and more of us more financially independent. So please share this episode with somebody else through Twitter, through Facebook, just clicking the share button on the podcast app that you're listening to. And of course, it's fantastic when you leave us reviews on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever you listen to this podcast. Now, this is the time of the year that we tend to make New Year's resolutions or try and keep them or stick to them. So my suggestion to you is, if you want to make 2020 a better year for you, join us at Wealth Retreat on the Gold Coast in June this year. Now, I know it's a long way away, but I think you've heard from Pete just a short while ago how powerful the networking, the experience is, living together for 5 days with a group of movers and shakers. Don't count yourself out. Don't say you're not good enough. If you want to step up to the big league, this is your chance to get the benefit of being as part of a community of already very, very successful people. So go to wealthretreat.com.au, find out all about it, register your interest. I interview everyone who joins us at Wealth Retreat to make sure it's right for you. So when you register your interest, I'm not going to have a chance to chat with you until I come back from my overseas vacation, but that's okay. Commit it to yourself by crossing out the second weekend of June, which happens to be a long weekend, and join us at Wealth Retreat. I look forward to being part of your ongoing wealth creation journey. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week, and I'll catch up with you again real soon for my next episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?